Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Derek Melber, and I'm going to be running the webinar today. And I'm going to be honest. I know that auditing and monitoring sometimes seems a little boring, but I have a what I consider to be pretty awesome webinar for you today. And I've been working on the concept of true continuous auditing and monitoring for years, and I think I finally achieved it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. For those of you that aren't familiar with me, let me give you a little bit of background about me. I am the technical evangelist for the AD Solutions team at Manageengine. Also, for many years, I have been an independent contractor. I am a group policy MVP. I used to be an Active Directory MVP. I do a tremendous amount of speaking, writing, book writing, blogging, article writing, all about Active Directory, group policy, Windows security, and auditing. So it is certainly my pleasure to be able to present to you today and give you some, hopefully, insight into some things that I've been working on trying to solve problems for administrators, security professionals, as well as auditors. I will pinpoint a couple of important things on this particular slide. First of all, there's my email address. You can email me with questions. Second of all of my historical articles are available on auditingwindowsexpert.com, which come from a variety of different locations throughout the web. Also, I've been most recently blogging on the Manageengine website under the Active Directory blog. So if you go into the communities there, you'll see blogs and then Active Directory, and I have some pretty, what I consider to be pretty awesome blogs about just general topics and solutions. Not everything out there is really related towards just product. I'm trying to really get evangelism around Active Directory, security, monitoring, management, auditing, that whole piece. So it's not just pigeonholing you into products. It's really trying to give you lots of information. For those of you that have seen me speak, it's a privilege to have you on my webinar. I will be starting a little bit of a tour here in a couple of weeks, going to different conferences, different events. I'll be in South Carolina, I'll be in Missouri, I'll be up in Pleasanton, California. So I will be out and about. So hopefully if you're near one of those events, please stop by, listen to what I have to say, and please come up and shake my hand. I would really appreciate it. But let's move on to the topic of today, which is Active Directory monitoring and auditing. And really what I want to do is I want to go over the basics, and then I want to talk about a little bit more sophisticated advanced stuff that Microsoft provides, and then I want to kind of show you what you can do with that and then give you a solution for what you really want. So really what we're going to talk about first is what is change monitoring of Active Directory. I know many of us have this definition in our own mind of what this is, but I'm going to give you what my definition is, and hopefully that will match your definition and also expand on what your definition is. We need to then move on and talk about how to successfully get this stuff monitored. How do we get Active Directory changes in some format that we can then go back and look at? And not only do we have what Microsoft calls auditing of Active Directory, now we have something called advanced auditing. And advanced auditing comes with the newer Windows Server operating systems, starting with Windows Server 2008. I know that many of you maybe have 2008 R2, you may have 2012, you may have 2012 R2, and all of those support the advanced auditing. The great thing is you can use both auditing or advanced auditing for the solution I'm going to show you. I just feel it's better to have advanced auditing because it gives you more detail, it gives you more in-depth information about what you're trying to monitor. Because auditing and advanced auditing goes into the security log, we have to talk about the security log. We have to understand how to set this up and how to actually view what we've set up. Whatever we configure, the outcome of that, we have to know where to go. So I want to kind of give you some tips and tricks on the security log, and then we'll go into ADAudit Plus. So first of all, let's start off with a definition of what is change monitoring. Well, Change monitoring is the concept that we want to track all changes that occur in Active Directory. So let me just throw out some examples. Let's say, for example, you've been on vacation in the Bahamas for a week, and you come back, and all of a sudden you find that there's some problems with users in a particular department, and you start asking around, well, what happened? What happened? What happened when I was gone? And everyone gives you that same answer, right? Everyone gives you the same answer when you ask what happened. The answer is always, well, nothing happened. We didn't do anything. So what you can do is you can go to the log of what has changed when you were gone, and you can discover what changed. So let's say, for example, that maybe all the users in a department were moved out of a group. Let's say that the group was deleted. Let's say that maybe the users were moved to a different organizational unit and they don't have the same settings through group policy. Many different things could have occurred, but the log is going to tell you what occurred. That is change monitoring. We're monitoring the changes that occur. Now, you may think, well, no, Derek, I have a small shop. You know, I have 500 employees. It's me and 2 other administrators. You know, it's so small, we don't need change monitoring. I guarantee you need change monitoring. Let me give you an example. I do quite a few classes on security and auditing of Active Directory. And these classes that I provide, we have hands-on. And the other day, I was in a class, and of course one of the students did something to their machine, and Active Directory stopped working. And I asked her, I said, well, what did you do? And of course she said, I did nothing. So what we did is we went to the log, and we found out that, yes, she did do something. She didn't do the lab correctly. Instead of modifying the permissions at an OU, she modified the permissions at the Active Directory domain node level. Because she did that, she completely denied access to everyone in Active Directory. Now, that was just 2 people, myself and a student, in an environment with Active Directory. But because I had the log, I was able to go in and find out what happened. So now, with that information, I can go in and recover. So the ability to track changes for everything that occurs in Active Directory to all the objects is extremely important. Now, if we look at the details within Active Directory, every object has importance when you look at it from that standpoint. Every user is important because what if I delete a user? Every group's important because what if I modify group membership? Every computer is important because if I remove a computer from Active Directory and that computer holds the data for the organization, well, users aren't going to gain access anymore. Well, what if I modify group policy? What if I modify the password policy? So as you can see, we can't just focus on bits and pieces of Active Directory. We really need to focus on the full brunt. Everything that changes in Active Directory, we need to monitor it. So that's what I mean by change monitoring of Active Directory. Now, all of this logging that's occurring has to give me relevant information. Now, before we jump into the event viewer, which is going to be in the next section, I want to talk a little bit about the event viewer. Microsoft spent a tremendous amount of time a couple of years ago. Actually, it was right before Windows Vista, changing the event viewer and the logs that are in there, actually getting us something that we can read. So that something that we can read has to include the details of what changed in Active Directory. We need to know who made the change. Okay? Now, for the auditors on the phone, all of you are going, thank you, Derek, for saying that we need to track changes based on user. We cannot have a common user account that all administrators use. Yes, I'm on your side here, auditors, and administrators that are on the webinar. You have to have unique user accounts for changes that occur in Active Directory. It's the only way to really track things. We also need to know which object was changed. Was it a user? Was it a group? Which group was it? Which user was it? Which property was it? So we need to know the details of the object that changed. We need to know when the change occurred. That way it gives us a benchmark of kind of, okay, the disaster started here and many things have occurred since then. We need to know what the setting is now and what the old setting was. So when we go into the log, we need to have all this good information there. We need to be able to look at the information and it be in the language that we understand. so that we don't have to decrypt. And I know that many of you on this webinar have had that problem. You've gone into the log and you have to decrypt some event code, or you have to decrypt some Microsoft code or something. And you have to go out to TechNet or somewhere on the web to do that. We don't want that. We want a solution that gives us something that's easily readable so that we can quickly solve our problem. So when we start talking about tracking Active Directory changes, we have to consider the environment. Now, the environment that I'm talking about here is within Active Directory, we have domains, and domains are controlled by domain controllers. And all the domain controllers in the domain where you're monitoring have to have monitoring enabled. That obviously makes sense. Well, hopefully it makes sense, because when I communicate with Active Directory, I don't always communicate with a single point of a domain controller. I may communicate with 4 or 5 different domain controllers in a day. So each domain controller controls access into Active Directory. Yes, it is a multi-master model, but one of the gotchas is that each domain controller controls its own security log, okay? So what we need to do before we get into that concept is we need to enable auditing through Active Directory, okay? So we're going to have to go into Active Directory, and we're going to have to set up auditing, as it's called from the Microsoft point of view, so that now our domain controllers are tracking the information. Now, there is a default domain controller group policy object called the default domain controller policy. You could just do it in this GPO, or you could create a new GPO and link it to the domain controller's OU. It really doesn't matter, okay? Now, if you want to follow the truest, best recommendation from Derek, Group Policy MVP, I'm going to tell you to create a new GPO and link it to the domain controller's OU, primarily because I really don't trust Microsoft modifying the default domain controller policy back to the default and wiping out all my settings. Yeah, I'm a little freaky that way, but that's my recommendation. Now, in order to get to this auditing piece, I have there on your slide where it's located in the GPO. We go under Computer Configuration, the Policies section, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policies, Audit Policy, and when we get there, we should see something that looks like this. Okay, so notice I'm in the default domain controller's policy. I have my link here on where to get to it, and that's how I find that information. Now, if I go down here in my actual server, so now you should be looking at my server, I'm going to go to my group policy management. I'm going to come here to my domain controller's OU, my default domain controller's policy. I'm going to edit that GPO, and under Computer, Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policies, I have the Audit Policy, and here's where I have that, okay? Now, notice that every single setting has success and failure. So we first of all have to engage the policy by checking here, and then if you want to only track successful changes, do success. If you want to track when someone's denied doing something, you want to do failure. Or you can do both, of course. All this information is going to be tracked in our security log on the domain controller where the activity occurred. Let me say that again. When you set up auditing of Active Directory changes, when a change occurs, that event is going to be logged on the domain controller where the event occurred. Hopefully things are registering now. Many of you have gone into Active Directory users and computers, and you've seen the option to connect to one or a different domain controller. This is why that is so important, because when you have actions on a domain controller, it's that domain controller that's logging that information, okay? So this is how some of this information ties together. Now, all of the events that are triggered from what you set up in auditing are stored in the security log of your event viewer, okay? And again, I'm going to reiterate because it is so important. It's stored in the security log on the DC where the event occurred. Each DC has its own unique security log, and it's not replicated. Okay? Events occur on DCs where events are registered on DCs where the event occurs. Each DC has its own separate security log, and the security logs are not replicated. So if you have 50, let's say you have 100 domain controllers, you have 100 different security logs. This is why you may be having trouble finding something that you're trying to track. This is what makes the monitoring that Microsoft provides a little bit cumbersome, a little bit complex, a little bit overwhelming, because it's not something that is easily done. It actually is pretty difficult, okay? Now, there are two different audit settings that can trigger events in Active Directory. One is the directory service access, and one is the account management, okay? Both of them will generate information inside of Active Directory. Now, primarily, I'm going to point you to the directory service access. The reason for that is we want to track Active Directory changes, and yes, account management will do some of that, but account management is somewhat geared towards your servers and the security accounts manager, the SAM on those servers. My best recommendation is set them both up so they're both logging to that security log. But here is a big, big, big tip. When you do directory service access, you must also go into the security tab for the different nodes, and you must select auditing. Here's a screen capture of that. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay? So, for example, let's say that I want to track at the domain level something. I'm going to go to Active Directory Users and Computers. That is going to launch. For the Active Directory node, the domain node, I'm going to go to Properties. I'm going to go to Security. I'm then going to go to Advanced, Auditing, and this is what I'm talking about. Notice all of my settings in here. I must go in and configure for the node and the object under the node what I want to track. If you don't do this, you're going to miss everything. Now, if I come in here and I look at, let's say this one right here, I'm tracking creating and deleting computer accounts. Okay? I also am going to have somewhere in here organizational units. I'm going to have users. I'm going to have groups. Notice that for every type of object, I have to audit that type of object and the access for that object. Okay? This is a big one. This is where a lot of people got tripped up when they basically enabled directory service access through auditing and then nothing showed up, or maybe a couple of things showed up. You must go in and enable this additional tracking. If you don't do it, you're not going to get everything tracked. Okay? And don't forget all the areas. Remember, a couple of slides ago, I was giving you examples on the idea that we need to track every object. Users, groups, computers, group policy. We need to do the GPC and the GPT. The GPC is the group policy container. This is an Active Directory node. And the group policy template, this is the sysvol, underneath the sysvol on your domain controllers. So all of these things need to be tracked. We can also track schema changes. So now it's getting even bigger. It's getting even better. Because that was difficult to track before, right? I mean, many of us might have removed everyone out of the schema admins group so that no one can make a change, but what if someone tries to make a change? I want to know when someone fails to update the schema. I want to know when an application that I download from the internet and I want to play around with and test tries to modify the schema. I want that monitored. So as you can see, we're not only broadening what you're currently monitoring, we're going further in depth, which is what we want. We want everything, okay? We want everything to be logged, because if everything is logged, now we can mine through the information and we can find out, yes, when we were gone for 7 days in the Bahamas, that we know what happened when we got back, okay? So that is auditing. Now, back in, oh gosh, this was right before Windows Vista came out, Microsoft worked with the auditing and security compliance community to come up with a more detailed way of tracking and monitoring Active Directory changes. When Microsoft implemented this, they called it advanced auditing. And really what advanced auditing does, it expands the current auditing that I just showed you, giving you more details, giving you a little bit more insight into what is being changed and the depth of what is actually being tracked. Okay, so it's expanded auditing. It provides details for most compliancy mandates. So whether it's PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley, Graham-Leach, whatever it is, they're going to be a one-to-one match. Okay. Now, all of the advanced auditing still shows up in the security logs. Exactly the same model. Nothing has changed there. So when I set up auditing or advanced auditing, it all goes into that security log. Okay. Now, this is what the advanced auditing looks like. Notice that I'm under computer configuration, Windows settings, security settings, advanced policy. If I go back to my live environment and I go back to my group policy here and I go to my default domain policy, you'll see it's under computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings. Now, this was the old audit policy up here under your local policies, but down here under advanced audit policy, I have different audit policy settings. Notice that the names almost match exactly, okay? So before I had directory service access, now I have DS access, which stands for directory services. And when I go under directory services, you'll see it isn't just a simple enable disable anymore. I have granular details. So now you can see that I can get very detailed here about what I'm going to track. And then when I click on this, this is the success and failure. Also under the account management, you can see that I have users separated from security groups. So the idea that Microsoft was trying to get across with advanced auditing was we're going to give you the ability to track things a little bit more precisely. We're going to give you the ability to go in and just track what you want to track. And as a benefit, we're going to give you more details. Now, as a somewhat of a side note, the original auditing is a 3-digit tracking system. So the majority of things that are tracked with normal auditing is 3 numbers. The new advanced auditing is 4 numbers. And there is translations. If you go, there's so many places on the internet, you can go to these translations. You can put in one event ID, and it gives you to the other one. So there is a way to get back and forth between them, but the 4-digit ones expand the detail on what's actually being tracked in Active Directory. Okay? So again, this slide just kind of covers those details, and then for the directory service changes, I've kind of exploded those out for you so you can see the details of what's actually being tracked when you set up auditing, the advanced auditing of directory service access. Okay? Now, both the local system and Active Directory can enable this. Of course, I'm going to recommend you go to Active Directory and a GPO linked to a node in Active Directory to do this. But if you want to go to the local machine and do that, the only difference is if you go to a local machine, it doesn't include the policies node, where in a GPO and Active Directory it does. Okay? But really, the result is going to be the same, and everything else is going to be the same. This does go back to Windows Vista, but it is a limited form. It does go back to Windows Server 2008, but again, it's in limited form. Because those were the first generation operating systems that kind of engaged this, it was kind of lacking in the overall details of what it provided. Okay? All right, so where are we at so far? Well, we talked about what monitoring of Active Directory was. I want every change to be logged. We talked about how to engage that logging. We go into the auditing in a group policy object, and we enable directory service access. Then we also go into Active Directory to the security tab for the objects and the nodes, and we enable auditing there as well. So now we have the machine being told that it can audit, and we have the Active Directory infrastructure being told it's going to be audited. And the two together play match game, and now things show up in the security log. Okay? If you want to do advanced auditing, it's the same process. You just have advanced auditing instead of auditing. Well, you might be thinking now, well, gosh, Derek, if we have auditing and we have advanced auditing, which one wins? Well, that's a great question. We have compatibility issues. Now, when Microsoft releases new technologies and they leave the old technologies around, they have decisions to make. And those decisions are around, what am I going to do to this end user, to this organization, with the new settings and the old settings? Well, the auditing, the legacy auditing, has been around, I don't want to say forever because that makes me sound really old, but it's been around forever. I mean, it goes back to Windows NT. So we're talking about a technology that was from 1995, 96, and it was just updated in around the year 2008. Okay? So that's a long time. And since that's all we had, that's what everyone's using. So if we have a new technology that's called advanced auditing, and we all of a sudden just overwrite what we had before, things may break. So by default, Microsoft has the legacy auditing winning over the advanced auditing. So if you go in and just set up advanced auditing, and you don't have the auditing set up, the legacy, nothing's going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. You have to go in, and I have right here on your slide the path and the policy. Computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, local policies, security options. And the setting is force the audit policy subcategory settings to override the audit policy category settings. Now, hopefully that language now makes sense to you because I described it, but that's what we want to set. And the whole idea of this is we want to set it to enabled, and we're going to ignore the legacy. If we disable, we're going to use the legacy. We're going to use the original audit policy instead of the advanced audit policy. Okay? So make sure that you go in and set this. Set this in the same GPO where you set the advanced auditing. That way, it's all in one place, and you can go and verify, and everything's in line. But you have to do this. If you don't do this, you're going to be missing some stuff. I have spoken to many administrators that said the advanced auditing doesn't work, and I show them this, and all of a sudden things start to be audited, and their security log fills up. Okay? So this is a very important piece of the advanced auditing. All right? So now that we have auditing or advanced auditing set up on every domain controller, and we have either the legacy auditing or the new advanced auditing engaged, and we have all of our Active Directory nodes being audited, things should show up in the security log. So if I go back to my domain controller here, and I go to my event viewer, and I go to my Windows log security log, there's information. Notice that there are 4 digits that are showing up. So I have now information showing up in my security log. I currently have 214,000 events. If I want to round up, 215,000. That's a lot of events, okay? Now, before we get into those details, let's talk a little bit about the log itself. The security log has a maximum size of 4 gig, okay? Now, you're going to read some different things from different places. I mean, I've done tons of research on this, and I'm going to tell you what Microsoft recommends. Microsoft recommends 300 meg, okay? Now, if it can go to 4 gig, and they only recommend 300 meg, doesn't that seem like a mismatch? Well, it is a mismatch, okay? It's primarily based on performance and whether or not your domain controller can keep up and whether it's going to bog down your domain controller. Microsoft is never going to give you a setting on purpose. Notice that on purpose part. They're never going to give you a setting that they know is going to hurt your domain controller because then it's going to hurt them in the long run, okay? Now, notice also that we have the ability to control the event log when it reaches the maximum size. Okay? There is an option to override events as needed. There is an option to do not override events and do it manually. And then there's an option to archive the log when full, do not override events. Now, for some of you, you may be looking at that middle option going, I don't remember that, Derek. I remember it saying something about override events older than so many days. Well, Microsoft made a change. And now Microsoft allows you to automatically archive the security log. I know, pick yourself off the floor. This is the technology you've been wanting for a long time. But Microsoft will automatically archive, or it gives you the ability to automatically archive your security log when it's full. Okay? Now, we're going to get to that setting in just a minute. Okay? But that's how you control the security log kind of at the front. All right? Now, I'm going to be honest. The 4 gig is typically where I put most log sizes. Okay? If I'm using Microsoft technology, I usually go to 4 gig because I want as much information shoved in that security log as possible, because if anything gets archived, boy, it's difficult for me to get that information out. Okay? And I've asked many other of my buddies in the industry that do similar stuff to what I do, and I say, hey, what do you set it to? And everybody that I know of sets it to 4, unless they have a third-party tool. Okay? So in order for you to manage these security logs, again, this is a security thing, there is a user right called Manage, Auditing, and Security Log. I'm going to show you where that is. I'm going to go back to my domain controller. I'm going to go back into my group policy, which is here. And here's where the audit policy was. Down here's where the advanced audit policy was. And if we go under audit policy to user rights, we have the user rights here, and one of them is related to the security, Manage, Auditing, and Security Log, right there. If I enable this for a user on my domain controller, it is going to give them the ability to configure the auditing on the files and folders, like we did for Active Directory. It is going to allow them to view the events in the security log and clear the security log. Ah, that's the big one, isn't it? What we don't want is we don't want someone doing something maliciously. We don't want someone going into Active Directory, adding themselves to a group that maybe they shouldn't have access to, and then going out and wiping out the security log so that event is now gone. All right? Because if it wasn't archived, it's gone for good. So this is a big thing, and that's why I point this user right out. This is a very important one, and we need to really protect this, okay? So this is how we give someone the ability to look at those logs. Now, another key feature of Event Viewer is something called a custom view. Now, I'm kind of old school, going back to the Windows NT days, and in Windows NT and early versions of Windows, 2000, 2003, Microsoft really had a bad Event Viewer, and many people didn't use it because it was so bad. But now Microsoft has added some pretty cool things to the Event Viewer. So let me just jump in and let me show you some of those instead of kind of just talking over them. If I go into my Event Viewer, Microsoft has something called custom views, and you can see here that they have given me some of these custom views here, and here's administrative events. So these are what Microsoft considers administrative events, and you can go in and you can actually look at what Microsoft means by that. So it's the application, system, whatever, and it's grayed out because they put it in here by default. So that's what Microsoft considers. Now, what I want to talk about with regard to this custom view is I can create a new custom view. So I'm going to create a custom view, and I can point to one or more logs. So I'm going to come down here to my group policy log, and notice that I can take a group policy log, which is down here in the system, and I can take the security log, and I can merge these two logs together. Okay? That is awesome. I now have two different logs merged together, interwoven with time. This is spectacular, okay? I mean, this is some pretty cool stuff, right? So if we come down here, I don't know if there's going to be a group. There we go. So now you can see the two are merged together. So now when I have an issue, I can look at these things merged together in a single view. And it is dynamically updating the custom view to look at that. So this is a pretty cool new feature that Microsoft provides for us. And it's right here on all of your newer Windows systems. So this custom view is some pretty awesome stuff, and I definitely recommend that you start playing around with it. If you go out to my articles that I was telling you about on the auditingwindowsexpert.com, there's quite a few articles out there about these custom views and how you can benefit from them. And actually, Microsoft has their own server roles. So depending on what role you've set up for the server, it actually creates their own custom views for that particular server. There's some pretty cool stuff in this, all right? So these are some of the small details that Microsoft provides for you that maybe got swept under the rug or maybe you never even saw, but it's some pretty cool stuff, okay? And, of course, you can go in and you don't have to look at the entire log. If you just want to look at certain event IDs, you want to look at certain dates, I mean, this is some awesome stuff, okay? But what's the limitation? It's just the current logs. It's not the archive. It's just the current log. So here's where we start running into roadblocks. Because how often does your 300 megabit security log fill up and have to be archived? If you're using Microsoft recommendations, that thing's archived multiple times a day. If it's a highly trafficked domain controller, you may have 50 security logs for one domain controller, all in the archives. And they're not archived together. They're archived in individual files based on date and time that it was archived. So yes, this custom view is some awesome stuff, but we have severe limitations, okay? Now, the custom view can be filtered. I can associate a task with it. I can be exported. It can be copied. So could I, with a little bit of effort, take all of my archived logs and put them into a single event viewer view that I could then set filters on? Yep, you could do that. You'd have to constantly get new archives in there, and over time, the event viewer logs are going to be enormous. When I say enormous, I'm saying these things are going to take terabytes, if not exabytes of information. I mean, we're talking some significant amount of data that you're going to have to put because these files are not optimized. They're not in any way optimized for how they're stored. They're just security logs. So you could do that manually, but it's a manual process every day to make sure that all of the archived logs are put into this view so you can filter them, okay? Now, as far as backing them up to make sure they are archived, here is where I have that, okay? So as you can see, this is a GPO setting. I give you the path right there. And not only can I enable it to back up the log, I can also specify, as it says right here, the log file path. So I could put all of them on a centralized server. So let's say that I have 10 domain controllers, and I want to do Active Directory monitoring like I'm describing. Could I do that? Well, let me tell you what you could do. You could set up the auto archive for every single domain controller to archive to the exact same folder on a centralized server. And let's say that every domain controller on average produces 10 archived logs per day. That means that you have 100 individual files in that folder every day. And if you need to find one event that occurred that day, you would have to look in 100 files to find it. That's the rub. That's the problem. So yes, there's a solution, and Microsoft really tried to give you everything, but it's mining the information out that becomes a problem. It's It's organizing the information so that you can quickly find what you want. Could you imagine in that class that I was talking about earlier where the woman modified the Active Directory permission, if I had to look through 100 files to find the one thing that she did? Oh, it would probably never happen. I can guarantee you I never would have got to the end of that problem. Okay? So what are the issues with what we have from the Microsoft solution? Well, first of all, the security log is just too small. Second of all, events are logged on the DC where the event occurs, so I have multiple logs. Okay? I have no reporting in the interface. I didn't even mention reporting yet. Why? Because it doesn't exist. We do not have reporting in the event viewer. Sure, we have filtering. Sure, we have custom views, but we don't have a way to say, hey, I want to know every user that's been created in the last month. Tell me. That does not exist. Okay? Events are hard to decrypt and not easy to analyze because you're going to have to go through and you're going to have to look at details. You can't look at a single screen across all of the entries. You're going to have to go into the details, right? I mean, if I just go back here and I go to the event, if I go to the security log, let's get rid of this. If I go to the security log and I go to, let's say, object access, it doesn't tell me what it is. I have to go into it, and then I have to scroll to find out what happened. And then, of course, don't we love these types of numbers, transaction IDs, this is service host. And then I may have to go to the details, and the details are going to tell me. I would have to do this for every single entry. And I have 100 files, 300 meg each, across 10 domain controllers for that. Wow. Okay, so not easy to analyze. Can I change that to impossible to analyze? Because I think it really is, all right? And this is why you guys aren't monitoring Active Directory. This is why. You have some tools, you have some capabilities, but the interface is just not there. You do have alerting. I can set tasks, associate tasks with events, but it's just not detailed enough. I mean, what if I want to know when the built-in administrator account changes? Well, I could set up user changes, and then I have to filter through just the administrator. It just becomes too much of a problem. I can't get that detailed. So I need a solution that is going to allow me to solve these problems. That solution is ADAudit Plus. Now, before I get into ADAudit Plus, let me tell you the technology that this sits on top of. This sits on top of the Microsoft Auditing and Advanced Auditing technology. I think the Auditing and Advanced Auditing is fantastic. I just don't like the way it's implemented with the security logs being so small and the way they're archived. So what happens with ADAudit Plus is it goes in and starts pulling all of the logs from the security log before it's overwritten into a database, so that database can be centrally mined. If I have 10 domain controllers, 10 domain controllers full of information is put in the same database. Now I have, can we say it together? True continuous monitoring. Real time. Not just one DC, not just one event, all events that are related to Active Directory. Instead of me yammering, let me show you. Right here. Here is ADAudit Plus. Look at my reports. I'm just gonna show you reports. I'm not even gonna show you what's in the reports yet. Look at these reports for user logons, logon failures, failure due to bad password, logon activity based on DC, based on IP address, domain controller logon activity. If you're trying to make sure that you have a good domain controller model and that you have domain controllers taking their load, this is how you can check for that. What if you want to know about account management? All AD changes, user management, group management. Down here we have user management. Recently created, deleted, modified, locked out users, unlocked users. Okay? Users based password changes. We have down here group management. I want to know when groups are created, groups are modified, people are taken in and out of groups. Everything that I'm showing you here is a default report. These default reports are pulling information out of the security log. Okay? So you're using Microsoft technology, you just have a layer on top of it so you can actually look at something that's worthwhile. Okay? So let me see. If I want to know recently created users, in my little environment here, it's a demo environment. In the last 30 days, I don't have any newly created users. But if I go back to the last year, I don't have any recently created users. I thought I did. Hold on. Let's see. Let's pick something else in. I haven't created. Oh, there's one. I created ADAudit Elvis. Elvis is in the house. And Mark. It tells me what changed, who made the change, what the date was, on which machine. Pretty awesome stuff, huh? Okay. Well, what if I want to know about group management? I want to know recently modified groups in the last, let's say, month. Actually, that'd be the last 30 days, wouldn't it? Oh, there we go. So it says that I modified HR project admins on this date, July 3rd. Right before I went on the holiday, I made some modifications. These are the reports that you have. There are over 100 default reports. No longer do you have to open up the security log in the event viewer and sift through. No, no, no. It is a point-and-click model. Okay? There are 10 different report areas. Group policy, users, groups, computers, policies. All of these things are there. Okay? I can also do custom reports. This is where it gets fun for me. I mean, I'm going to tell you flat out, this is where it is so fun for me because I've been dealing with administrators, security professionals, and auditors for the better part of the last 20 years, and I always get these questions. Okay? So let me show you some things that I have done. So inside of my little world here, I have my reports. And I have one that says Administrator 500 because the built-in administrator has the SID 500. I want to know when it's been modified. I have a report specifically for that. So back in, let's say, May, did I have any changes? Yes, I did. Okay? The user account control was changed. Okay? This is the detail that I want. So I know, based on whatever range that I have, like let's see in June, did anything change in June? Nope, nothing changed in June. Did anything change in April? Nope, nothing changed in April. Tell me this isn't valuable information. Tell me this isn't critical for you. When you come back and you can go up to the account management and all AD changes and you say for the last week, I want to know what changed. I want to know over the last custom period week, right? I want to know in April what changed. You can go in and look at everything that changed. Here's the full list of everything that changed, okay? This is true continuous monitoring and therefore auditing of Active Directory. You know all the details. What other reports do I have here that I customized? Oh, I love this one. Modified admin groups in the domain. Now, for those of you that deal with this a lot, you may be thinking, well, Derek, admin group, that's kind of generic, isn't it? What do you mean by admin group? Well, what I mean by admin group is a group that has elevated privileges. Yes, schema admins and domain admins do, but how many additional groups did you create, did a service create, did an application create, and elevated the privilege? Guess what? I can add those in right here. Look at that. I'm going to show you how to do it. This is so stinking easy. This is the simplest thing to do. I go to configuration. I go down here to group modification, modified admin groups. I edit it, and I add in the groups. Now all of these groups are being monitored. When any of these groups are in any way changed, I can see it. I feel like I need to pause. Tears coming to my eye. This is true continuous monitoring. Customized true continuous monitoring. Oh, you want what? I can hear you guys all right now asking, oh, we also want alerting. We want to be emailed when the enterprise admin group changes. Not a problem. We have alerting as well. It's absolutely built in. You have alerting down to the same level that you have for the reporting. Okay? Now, where are my alerts? There they are. Okay, alerts over the last 90 days. There they are. Even a pretty pie graph telling you when it's critical or whatnot, and you get to specify these. Okay, now I haven't had one occur in quite a while, but when it does occur, when I go to my home page, my alerts show up here. And you can set up an email. You can be on the beach in the Bahamas and know when someone back home changed a privileged group membership. It's unbelievable. I'm telling you, this is what I've been looking for years. Over 10 years, I've been looking for this solution, and here it is. It's absolutely stunning. Okay? So if you have any questions, please, in your Citrix interface there, you should have an option over there on some bar that says questions. Type in a question. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible. We don't have a ton of time left, but I'm going to try to get to them. Also, if you don't feel like you want to ask a question here, but you want to ask me a question, my email is derek@manageengine.com. Okay? So what have we talked about today? Well, we talked about what change monitoring really is. Okay? And change monitoring and auditing is really the same type of concept, right? We just want to know what changed, right? We looked at auditing and advanced auditing and how to set those up. Once we have those set up and all the details, don't forget the details, we go to the security log. And the security log tells us what's there. But there are many issues with that security log. The log is fine, but how Microsoft controls that log is the problem. They're too small, too many archived files, there's no reporting. So what did ADAudit Plus do for us? It opened up a world to us that was a point and click for everything that we want to know about. If you have an auditor breathing down your neck, and any auditor on the call, I apologize for poking at you, but if you have an auditor breathing down your neck saying, I need to know what happened here, it's a point and click. You can export it to a PDF. You can export it to an Excel spreadsheet. You can export it to whatever format they want. All these reports are exportable right there in the interface. This is the power of ADAudit Plus. True continuous auditing. It's not continuous auditing. Now, I could go into that. It's true continuous auditing. Because auditors think that continuous auditing is I'm going to do multiple manual audits or I'm going to generate reports at a period. That's not true continuous auditing. In between all of those points in time, I could do whatever I want and you'd never know. True continuous auditing is tracking the changes. It's monitoring what actually changed in Active Directory. Now, as kind of a gift to you, if you go to this particular site, you can download ADAudit Plus and use it. I think it's a 30-day completely free trial. It's not limited. It's a completely free trial. I'm going to challenge you to do this. You know why? Another reason why I love the tool, anyone can install it. Anyone can install this tool. It is so simple to install, okay? It's literally a couple point and click, and it's seamless, all right? So let me get down here to my questions and see what kind of questions I had. Let's see. Let's see. I got quite a few questions. My little screen is trying desperately to. Okay, first question is, will recording of this be available? Yes, it will be. It will be available on the Manageengine website. And what I will do is I will ensure that everyone that's on the webinar gets an email to the link for that. How is the product priced? This is the great thing about my job. I am the technical evangelist, so I don't know how it's priced. I do, but I really don't want to get into it here. What I would rather you do is contact a salesperson or a technical person at it varies depending on how many domain controllers your organization, how many domains you have. All of those things are going to vary, okay? But I can tell you that the pricing is phenomenally competitive for anything else that even comes close to this. And I don't think anyone else comes close to a tool like this that's on the market. Let's see, do we need to make any changes in AD server while configuring ADAudit Plus? No, except for setting up auditing for both auditing and group policy, and auditing for your Active Directory nodes. That's it. Okay? You obviously need to have privileged access to access it through ADAudit, but that's how it performs that. Someone asked for the presentation. The presentation will be available on the Manageengine website, so you can go and share it with other people. Yes, I know the sound cut out. Thank you. Very good for that. And that's all the questions I have. So, you know, I'm going to be honest. This really excites me. I hope you can tell that. And the reason it excites me is this is something that has not been done till now. True continuous auditing. You have the ability to monitor every change in Active Directory when it occurs by alerts. You can go in and look at the history. You can give historical changes to your auditors. You can give auditors read access to the database. That way they can go get their own reports. It's really just some awesome stuff. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be at different presentations in the month of September, October, and November. So please, if I'm in your area, come see me, shake my hand. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to help you with your problems. That's my goal in life, is to help you solve your problems with Active Directory and all this. And with that, I want to thank you all for attending. And until the next time you hear me or see me, thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.